Welcome to Tech Review's video. My name is Adam. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use SQLite3 framework for Xcode 5. Just a simple app, one-page app that's going to create a table in the SQLite database and add and retrieve database information from the database. So what I did was, I have actually the app to save time for the video. I'm just going to go through what the app actually does. I created a blank project in Xcode, gave it a name. In the targets, what you want to do is you want to add the framework under the libraries. You want to hit the plus, search for this SQL3, click add, which we've already done, and add that to the project. Moving on, now we want to say create the page. So let's move on to the builder. In here, all I did was create a one UI view controller. Since we have one page, I'm using two text fields. Again, you can use multiple text fields. I'm using name, age. If you want to have more, you can have more. When the user enters the information in the fields, what it does, you have to, let me go over to here. If you click on tag, it's actually going to go down to the tag, which the first one will be 0, next one will be 1, and so forth. And the tags will actually, if you correspond the tag with the column, whatever column names you want to the database, you can have as many as you want. So, like I said, we have two fields. I have a save button. It'll save one record each time I enter information. If I select or push get data, it'll retrieve all of the records from the data or from the table and put it into a table view. So for now, again, it's just a one-page app. So let's go to the nuts and bolts. In your H file, we want to import the SQLite3.h, which is right here, and do an instant variable with SQLite to call it. In this case, I do my database name. You can call it whatever you want. I also have several other variables. We're going to use, for instance, database name, just to call it whatever we want. A table name. In this case, I'm using one table, so we're going to give that a name. Again, that's up to you what names you want to name them. Number of rows will correspond with the table view number of rows for however many items are in the list. The data list is where we're going to after we retrieve data from the database, we're going to put it into the array, which corresponds with the table view. We of course have table view here, so they correspond. Now we'll have a couple Boolean variables, which are just to flag whether table's okay, database status is open or not. I also have another array, which is my columns names. Again, you can add whatever columns you want. In this case, we're using name and age. We also have two buttons, IB actions, save, the fetch, which is retrieving the data, and we're going to have methods that are going to be called to when we need to get things from SQL. I've made an open database, create a table with a certain table name. Also with certain columns, I'm just using an array of columns. Add items to table. You're going to put, the string or the table name as a string, and you're going to use a column with values. I'm using an NS dictionary. It pairs off the column name with the text value of the text field, and of course a closed database. So we go to our .m file, start up at the top. What I did was synthesize. You have to synthesize your variables up here. In the view did load, we're going to come down. We're going to initialize our data list. It's a mutable array. We're going to say start number of rows is 0 because for now it's blank. Give it our database name and name, just a string. I'm using my sample database. You can call it whatever. The table name, my people. We're going to default the open status and the table OK to no. And our column names, which you can add, make it whatever you want, which will correspond with whatever table fields you want from the interface builder. So we have, in this case, name and age. So off the bat, we're going to do open database with the database name. If that returns an open or a true call, we're going to make that open status yes. Then we're going to create the table with the table name and the columns. If it does not, we're going to actually, I put a little warning. It's just a UI alert view with the title warning and the table was not created. And then you show it. But if it is created, we'll set the table OK to yes. Now before I get into the action, I'm going to go down to the bottom of where I have, there it is. We have open database with SQL name. It returns bool, so of course I have a boolean variable is open, defaults to no, so that we always return that. We have to set up the path of the SQL file name, which what we're going to do is use search for path directories and the NS document directory. Once I retrieve the path, it's an array of directory name or array of paths. I'm going to create a file name, take paths, and just take the first one, which will be the document directory we want to use. And we're going to append, of course, whatever name we said for the table name or for the database name and put it into the file as a file name. And we're going to call SQLite3 open, open the file using the file name and code it to UTF string using our database SQL3 that we created. And if we returns an SQLite OK, of course, is open is going to be yes, and now it's open. When we create the table, we're passing a table name, columns of the array into this method. Returns boolean, which defaults no, and if it does, then it's going to default yes. What I do is create a field set because the columns I have to set up the columns with how we will want to structure our SQL statement. So what I do is you can string with format. I'm passing each column name formatted as, in this case, just using text and delimited by commas, which is this statement. Then the actual call, the SQL statement, create table if not exists with the table name. We want to make ID integer primary key, auto increment, and we're going to use table name in the field set that we it up here so it has exactly what each column formatted string that we want. We do an execute call, SQLite3 execute, using the database. If it retrieves a SQL OK status, or I should say if it doesn't, we're going to close it. If it does, it's going to be has been created, yes, and return. So again, using the SQLite3 commands are very basic and very nice. Moving on to the add items to table, we're using a table name, a dictionary of objects. Here we're just going to loop through all of the key the user entered data from the XIB file, from the text file. So we're going to, here's the loop, and the values that we had created, which I'll show from the add or from the save button, is a dictionary. So we loop through all of the keys using the key name and the value of whatever is entered. We create the values in the columns, delimitate them with commas, move to our SQL statement, and we just do an insert into the table name and columns and values. We have an error variable. We have SQLite3 execute using the database name in a SQL statement encoded UTF-8 string. Again, if it's okay, or if it's not okay, close it, otherwise it's been added. And of course, close, there's an SQLite3 close using the database name of the SQLite that we set up, and we change the status. Using those, let me go up to save. So once we hit save, if the table is okay, we make sure the database is opened. If it's not, we open it. This is where we set up our dictionary columns and values. What I do is I actually go through the view, all of the subviews, and check to see if they're text fields. So as long as it's a text field, I can loop through all of the text fields, resigning each first responder, which closes the keyboard if the keyboard happens to be up. We want to grab the tag, because the tags correspond with my column name's index tag for the key name, which is the paired with the correct column name, and the value is going to be whatever was in that text field. Now, of course, going further, if you don't want to use, when you save it, normally you check and say if there's no value in there, don't bother to do this and don't save it. I didn't do that for this case, but you can, filter it out more and just limit what you're saving to the database. So, and the last thing I do is go through, and once I create the object column values, I just take that and I blank it out so that it clears out those text fields. Now, as long as there are object and columns and values, it's going to add items using the table name and the dictionary as we saw before, and then I just close the database. And just that's all we need to do to add that to the database. Now the fetch button, which is the get data, to start, what I do is I'm using the data list to hold everything, so I just right off the bat remove all of the objects and then select everything from our table. What you can do, which I might do in another video, is actually save the whatever item was added, just do just select that item with that item ID and then add that to a list, and then you don't have to do the remove all objects. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to clear out the list, grab everything from select all, everything from the table, and display it. So again, we do our check, make sure our database is open. Our statement will be using the SQL3 prepare, using the, our SQL statement encoded. If it returns an SQLite OK response, I'm going to count a count of the number of columns, which is just an SQLite column count using the statement. We do a while loop using the statement SQLite step, and as long as there's a row, it's going to loop through each row. I'm creating a result output string just to hold things I want to display. Now I'm creating a loop. I'm only actually going through, I want to actually loop through each column. This is the while statement is actually each row, and then now this I'm going to go through each column because I want to pick out just the columns. The field itself is a character where I'm going to use SQLite3 column text using the statement and whatever column that I'm on. In this case, it's A, integer A that I'm using here. Then put the field encode with UTF string into a field value. And then what I'm doing is I actually wanted to format it with a space. You can put a comma, whatever you want, because we actually want the name space age. So first column is going to come to name. It's going to do a name space, and we're going to add it to our result output. And it's going to go through each column. In this case, there's only 2. It's going to get the age. It's then going to add the age to the result output. Once it's finished with the columns, I just take our result line output, and I add it to our list, close the database, and now make the number of rows our data list count, because we should have a total count of however many records we get from the database, and then I reload the table. And again, if I might do a table one, but here are our table view methods. We have number of sections in table. I just have one section. Number of sections, number of rows in section are going to return the number of rows, which we base on whatever the count of the list. And of course, creating self a row at index path. We create the DQ reusable cell with identifier. If it's nil, what we do is create with just default style using our cell identifier. And as long as there's a list, data list count, which is greater than 0, then I want to display it. If there's nothing in the data list, we don't need to display it. Which again, we can just use object, the list, the object at index path from the data list, and that'll be in the text label text and return cell. So now I will run, and as you see, here's the page. We can put, I think I already have some data in here, but let's put sample Smith, and let's call it he's 60 age. Do save. As you see, it resigned the keyboard, blanked out our fields, and when I do get data, it's going to do the fetch, which it retrieves all of them. So here we have 3 sample items, and here is sample that we just added. And that concludes our tutorial. Thank you.